Hey there guys, and welcome to the video. Before I start, I want to say a massive thank you to the developer of EKA2L1, the emulator that I'm using in this video. It is an awesome emulator for the N-Gage and multiple other devices. It is amazing. I also want to say a massive thank you to Beardo Guy, who created the gamepad Bluetooth app, which allows you to use your N-Gage as well as some hardware to use it as a Bluetooth controller. So let's get started. So as you can see, whenever I press a button on the controller, it actually does stuff in the options, which is pretty sweet. I can select things with the appropriate buttons and go back and everything, which is pretty sweet. The way that I've configured this, it's probably going to change in the long term, but currently I've got this configured in a way in which that I'm using a joy to key, and I've mapped key presses to buttons on the gamepad here. I've managed to configure all the buttons except for 0, but I think people are going to be working on a fix for that. But you can push 3 buttons on the keypad as well as any of the directional buttons as well, and there's absolutely no issues with that. In fact, you can push multiple directions to get your your diagonals and stuff, which is pretty cool. In terms of latency, it's actually really quite responsive. It's way more snappier than I thought it was going to be, considering of the age of the device. Let's hop into some gameplay. So I'm really quite impressed with how well this runs. The emulator is really accurate, and the control mechanism for this is spot on. The only issue I've noticed occasionally is that it'll lose Bluetooth signal for a fraction of a second, and the last button that you were pressing at that time will just continuously be pressed, regardless of what you're pressing next. Let's get out of this half pipe. But you can see I can quite clearly just use it as a controller. It's fantastic. The one downside to this, because I can't configure the soft keys, so these 2 keys down here, because they're used for the app itself and they're used for the system, you can't configure these 2 soft keys currently, which is kind of a bind because you need to configure these 2 soft keys to a keyboard press in that case. So opening menus and stuff will have to happen on a separate device. But even then, it's still really cool. So the majority of the game can be played with just normal N-Gage controls, which is pretty sweet. The best thing about this configuration is the fact you can actually play anything that runs on the N-Gage pretty well, because of the key configuration can be identical to what the game requires, which is pretty sweet. So you can see I've got access to pretty much everything I need using the keypad buttons. It's currently using just a standard gamepad layout, but hopefully that's going to improve and change. Maybe have a specific version of the app for N-Gage emulation, which would be pretty sweet. But yes, it's pretty nippy, pretty responsive. So if you want to do this, the links are in the description down below. It's not the most user-friendly, but hopefully that will improve over time. A massive thank you to Beardo Guy for putting this together. It's pretty cool. So yeah, the things that you're going to need for this to happen is a S60 phone. I'm using a N-Gage, but you can use a QD or any other S60 V1 or V2. You're also going to need to construct a Bluetooth receiver for this project. Unfortunately, it's not just a simple, you can use any Bluetooth module, you got to have something configured for it. So for this project, I used a DigiSpark board and a serial Bluetooth board. So this is the DigiSpark here, and this is the Bluetooth board, and it's a simple case of just literally wiring up. My USB board didn't come with the pins wired, so I had to solder the pins to the board, but once that had happened, it was really easy. Then what you got to do is you got to install the software onto this device here so that it works properly. That's all in the GitHub, as well as use a whole bunch of libraries. In terms of the N-Gage side of things, you're going to need a couple of things for this to run. First of all, you're going to need a copy of Python for the N-Gage here, and that will enable you to run the software here. And that's pretty much it. Once you've installed both of these things and built this and configured it properly, what you do is you plug that into your PC. So you plug the Bluetooth receiver into your computer. Then once it's plugged into the computer, you click on Game BT, which is the app there. It'll load up, and it will scan for your device, which is the HC05, which is what I'm using. It might ask for a code, which will be 1234 or 0000. Press select, and then give it a second for this little thing up here to stop flashing. And once it's not flashing anymore, it should be connected. At the moment, it's currently emulating just a regular old controller, but there's going to be hopefully some improvements over the next little while so that it can actually do a little bit more. So this is my little terrible video about it. It's a little oddity. You can use this to control the emulator. You can also use this method to play any PC game that requires keyboard or controller input, which is pretty sweet. So you can play, you could play, but probably not you don't want to play stuff like Grand Theft Auto with this as your gamepad, which is pretty funny. Yeah, if you enjoyed that, thanks for watching.